There existed a moment, a chilling paradox etched in the annals of time, where the most sagacious man ever to walk the earth stumbled, making a decision of unparalleled folly. This was a king, not merely a ruler, but a beacon of intellect, capable of untangling the most intricate enigmas, resolving the most contentious disputes. His wisdom was so profound, so renowned, that queens journeyed from the farthest reaches of the globe, crossing treacherous terrains and vast oceans, all to bask in the light of his counsel. But discard the Solomon you believe you know. This is not the story of unblemished glory, of unwavering devotion. For this same man, the architect of God's magnificent temple, also erected altars to the dark forces, to the demonic entities that lurked in the shadows. The king who fervently prayed for divine wisdom ultimately prostrated himself before idols of stone and fire, forsaking the very source of his enlightenment. How does such a catastrophic fall occur? How does someone blessed with divine intelligence, with such an intimate connection to the Almighty, systematically dismantle the very gifts bestowed upon him? The answer, laid bare, reveals a terrifying truth about the inherent frailties of the human heart, a truth that will resonate within you, shaking the foundations of your understanding. Before you condemn this fallen giant, before you cast the first stone, endeavor to comprehend the confluence of events, the subtle seductions that led the wisest man alive down a path of ruin, transforming him into God's greatest disappointment. Picture it. Envision an aging king, his reign drawing to a close, his power waning like the setting sun. His hands, once firm and commanding, now tremble with the weight of years, clutching architectural drawings that represent a dream, a sacred ambition he will never witness come to fruition. David, the shepherd-turned-king, sits in his royal chamber in Jerusalem, the city he conquered and dedicated to God. The heavy golden crown, a symbol of his earthly authority, presses down upon his graying hair. He gazes out the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city he fought so hard to secure. The stones of Jerusalem stretch out before him, an endless tapestry of houses, each one a testament to battles won, to promises fulfilled. But tonight, his mind is preoccupied with something far grander than past victories. His fingers, gnarled and aged, trace the intricate temple plans spread across the cedar tables, the scent of fresh ink mingling with the thick, sweet aroma of incense that perpetually burns in his chamber. These aren't just blueprints, mere technical drawings. They are the tangible representation of a divine vision, a seed planted in his heart by God himself decades ago. A house for the Almighty, a sanctuary where his name would dwell forever, a beacon of hope and salvation for all who sought him. David had yearned to build it himself, had diligently gathered the materials, had meticulously drawn every measurement, pouring his heart and soul into the project. But God, in his infinite wisdom, had other plans. The Creator had spoken with unwavering clarity. This temple, this testament to faith, would be built by his son, Solomon. The rhythmic sound of footsteps echoes in the corridor, breaking the king's reverie. Solomon enters the chamber, young and bright-eyed, his face radiating the earnestness of a son who understands his father's time is fleeting. He carries himself with a quiet dignity, aware of the weighty responsibilities that are about to be thrust upon him. Think about this pivotal moment. A dying king, his life's work nearing completion. A young prince, poised to inherit a kingdom and a divine legacy. And between them, the future of God's chosen people hanging precariously in the balance. Everything David had fought for, every brick he had laid, every sacrifice he had made, everything God had promised, all of it would soon rest in the hands of this untested young man. David's weathered hand, bearing the marks of countless battles and years of leadership, gently settles on Solomon's head. The touch is imbued with the weight of blessing and burden, of hope and trepidation. His voice, once strong enough to command armies and inspire nations, now rasps with age, yet it still carries the authority of a king. He speaks words of wisdom, of justice, and above all, of the fear of the Lord. These aren't just fatherly platitudes, idle pieces of advice. They are the final instructions, the parting words of a man who walked with God through both triumphs and trials, through moments of profound sin and glorious redemption. Every word carries the weight of experience, earned through decades of ruling God's people, through navigating the treacherous currents of power and responsibility. But David doesn't just pass down words, however valuable they may be. He opens the royal treasury, revealing the accumulated wealth of a lifetime. Gold and silver are piled high in chests, their surfaces reflecting the flickering torchlight like a constellation of earthbound stars. Sacred instruments, meticulously crafted specifically for worship, gleam in the dim light. Architectural plans, detailed down to the last measurement, lie spread out before Solomon. Every beam, every pillar, every intricate detail carefully calculated, reflecting the immense scale and significance of the project. Everything needed to build the most magnificent structure the world has ever seen, a testament to God's glory and a symbol of his covenant with his people. The wealth of an entire kingdom, gathered over a lifetime of conquest and prosperity, now handed to a son with a single, sacred purpose. 1 Kings 2 verse 3 records David's final charge, his last and most important command. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways, and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies. Keep the charge of the Lord your God. Read those words again. Let them sink into the depths of your soul. David understood, perhaps better than anyone, that earthly kingdoms rise and fall like the tides, but God's commands, his eternal principles, endure forever. This wasn't just political advice, a strategy for maintaining power. This was spiritual survival, a roadmap to navigating the treacherous path of kingship while remaining true to God's divine will. The old king describes his vision one final time, his hoarse voice echoing off the perfumed cedar walls of the chamber. A temple so magnificent, so awe-inspiring, that every nation on earth would recognize that Israel's God is the only true God, the sovereign Lord of all creation. Not just another deity among a pantheon of idols, but the creator of heaven and earth, dwelling among his chosen people. David's eyes burn with intensity, reflecting the unwavering faith that has sustained him throughout his life. He knows he will never see this dream realized. He will never witness the temple's completion, but he believes absolutely that his son will. The vision consumes him, drives him, even in these final hours of his earthly existence. Then, finally, David dies in peace, his earthly mission fulfilled, and everything changes. Solomon assumes the throne at the tender age of 20. Picture what that moment looked like, the weight of history pressing down on his young shoulders. Hundreds of golden lamps illuminate the great hall of the palace, casting a warm glow on the scene as the elders of Israel, the leaders of the tribes, bow before their new king, pledging their allegiance. The weight of responsibility, the burden of leadership, settles heavily on young shoulders that have never carried a crown, never borne the weight of a nation's hopes and fears. The gold feels heavier than he expected, cold against his skin. The throne seems larger, more imposing than he remembered. The faces looking up at him, filled with expectation, carry the weight of generations, of centuries of tradition and divine promises. He walks the same stones where his father prayed, where he governed with wisdom and justice, where he wept in times of sorrow and despair. The air itself seems heavy, pregnant with history and divine promises that now depend entirely on his future decisions. But kingship, Solomon quickly learns, doesn't come with a grace period, with a time for learning and adjustment. Political challenges, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, hit immediately. Conspiracies, like serpents slithering in the shadows, brew in the palace corners. Neighboring nations, sensing weakness, test the resolve of this untested ruler, probing for vulnerabilities. The 12 tribes of Israel, diverse and often fractious, watch carefully, wondering if this young man has the strength, the wisdom, to hold together what his father so painstakingly built. Think about that immense pressure, the crushing weight of expectation. An entire nation's future, the destiny of God's chosen people, resting on the decisions of a 20-year-old. Every choice matters, every action scrutinized. Every mistake, no matter how small, could unravel decades of progress, jeopardizing the stability and prosperity that David had fought so hard to achieve. Then comes the first real test, the first significant challenge to Solomon's authority. Adonijah, Solomon's half-brother, a man consumed by ambition and resentment, still nurses secret desires for the throne, believing that he, not Solomon, should be king. He whispers with supporters in dark corners of the palace, plotting a conspiracy, weaving a web of intrigue that will test whether this new king has the strength, the ruthlessness to rule effectively. The plotting isn't subtle. It's a blatant challenge to Solomon's power, serious enough to threaten everything David built, everything he stood for. Adonijah, blinded by his own arrogance, believes that youth equals weakness, that Solomon's inexperience will make him an easy target. He is about to discover, in the most brutal way possible, just how wrong he is. Solomon's response is swift and surgical, demonstrating a decisiveness that belies his youth. The sound of swords, the clash of steel against bone, cuts through the morning air as he orders the execution of Adonijah and his main supporters, sending a clear and unmistakable message throughout the kingdom. There is no hesitation, no mercy, no royal pardon for family connections, no wavering in the face of potential backlash. The message rings clear, echoing through every corridor of the palace. Rebellion will not be tolerated in his kingdom. Any challenge to his authority will be met with swift and merciless retribution. Blood stains the palace stones, a grim reminder of the price of treason as bodies fall, silencing the whispers of dissent. Then he removes Abiathar from the priesthood, banishing him from Jerusalem, and exiles Joab, David's former commander, systematically cleaning house of every disloyal element, purging the kingdom of those who would undermine his rule. The cries of protest, the anguished pleas for mercy, echo through the marble hallways of the palace before being swallowed by the silence of royal authority, a silence that speaks volumes about the new king's unwavering power. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. This wasn't a display of tyrannical power. This was survival, pure and simple. A young king, establishing his authority, demonstrating that weakness would not be mistaken for youth, that loyalty to the crown was not optional, but an absolute requirement. The court, the nobles, the people learned quickly that Solomon might be young, but he was not naive, he was not easily manipulated, and he would not hesitate to use force to protect his throne and his kingdom. With his kingdom secure, with internal threats eliminated, Solomon makes a journey that will define everything that follows, a pilgrimage that will shape his reign and determine the course of his destiny. He travels to Gibeon, the most important high place in Israel, where Moses' tabernacle, the portable sanctuary that accompanied the Israelites during their wanderings in the wilderness, still stands. This is sacred ground, hallowed by centuries of prayer and sacrifice, where generations of his people had sought God's face, where they had poured out their hearts in supplication and thanksgiving. The very stones beneath his feet had witnessed countless acts of devotion, stretching back to the time of the patriarchs. Abraham had walked these paths, offering his son Isaac as a sacrifice. Moses had received revelations here, hearing the voice of God and receiving the 10 Commandments. Now Solomon comes, seeking divine wisdom, seeking guidance and strength for the impossible task that lies ahead. What happens next demonstrates the sincerity of Solomon's devotion, the depth of his faith. He offers 1,000 burnt offerings on the bronze altar, a sacrifice of unprecedented scale and devotion. Think about that number, try to imagine the scene. 1,000 sacrifices, one after another, for hours upon hours. The fire consumes offering after offering, devouring the flesh and wood, while perfumed smoke rises to the heavens like a dense cloud, covering the entire region, a fragrant testament to Solomon's unwavering faith. The smell of burning flesh and wood fills the air for hours, a pungent aroma that permeates everything. This isn't political theater. This isn't a public display of piety designed to impress his subjects. This is genuine worship, heartfelt devotion from a young king who understands, perhaps better than anyone, that he needs divine help, that he cannot succeed without God's guidance and blessing. Exhausted from the journey and the rituals, physically and emotionally drained, Solomon falls asleep near the sacred altar that night, his body weary but his spirit still yearning for God. The night wind carries the scent of incense and burning wood, mingling with the cool mountain air, while stars shine intensely overhead, their light twinkling like diamonds scattered across a velvet cloth. In that holy place, surrounded by the lingering presence of worship, something extraordinary is about to happen, something that will change Solomon's life forever. God appears to Solomon in a dream, not a vague vision, not a symbolic imagery, but the direct, unmistakable presence of the Almighty, filling Solomon's sight with golden light that doesn't hurt his eyes, but warms his heart with indescribable paternal love, a feeling of complete acceptance and unconditional affection. The voice of the Most High resonates like gentle thunder, powerful yet comforting, echoing through the depths of Solomon's soul. "Ask what I shall give you," God says, his words reverberating with infinite power and grace. The universe seems to pause, holding its breath, waiting for Solomon's answer. Everything depends on what this young king will request from the God of his fathers, the fate of his kingdom, the destiny of his people hanging in the balance. Solomon, humbled by the divine presence, recognizes his youth and inexperience, comparing himself to a small child before a people as numerous as the sand of the sea, feeling the crushing weight of royal responsibility on his young shoulders. He doesn't ask for riches, he doesn't ask for power, he doesn't ask for military victory. He asks for an understanding heart, the capacity to discern between right and wrong, the wisdom to judge the people fairly and govern his kingdom with justice. His voice trembling with humility, he places the kingdom's needs above his personal desires, demonstrating a selfless devotion that pleases God. God's response vibrates through the dream with divine approval, echoing with the force of creation itself. Because Solomon didn't ask for riches, long life, or the death of his enemies, but wisdom to govern well, to lead his people with justice and compassion. He will receive not only unequaled wisdom, but also riches and honor beyond measure, surpassing anything he could have imagined. 1 Kings 3 verse 12 records God's promise, the divine decree that will transform Solomon's life. "Behold, I now do according to your word. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been anyone like you before you, nor shall any like you arise after you. I have given you a wise and understanding heart." Read those words again. Let them resonate within you. Understand their profound significance. This wasn't just enhanced intelligence. This wasn't simply political shrewdness. This was supernatural wisdom, flowing directly from the mind of God into the consciousness of a 20-year-old king, a divine gift that would transform him into the wisest man who ever lived. Solomon awakens from the dream with his heart pounding with emotion and certainty, feeling a profound transformation in his mind, as if veils had been removed from his eyes, and he could see reality with crystal clarity, as if a new sense had been awakened within him. The world looks different now, sharper, more defined. Problems that seemed impossible yesterday suddenly have clear solutions. Complex political situations that once overwhelmed him now appear manageable, their intricacies laid bare before his newfound wisdom. The wisdom isn't just knowledge, it's not just an accumulation of facts. It's insight, intuition, the ability to penetrate to the heart of every matter, to understand the underlying motivations and hidden agendas that drive human behavior. He returns to Jerusalem, his heart overflowing with gratitude, and offers additional sacrifices before the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest containing the tablets of the 10 Commandments, the symbol of God's covenant with his people. The sound of musical instruments, of trumpets and harps and cymbals, echoes through the hills as he celebrates with his entire entourage, giving thanks for the extraordinary promise he received from God, for the divine gift that has transformed his life. The Levites sing psalms of thanksgiving, praising God for his mercy and grace, while priests offer burnt offerings that fill the air with fragrant smoke, creating a sensory experience of profound holiness. This isn't just religious ceremony, this isn't just a formal act of worship. This is a joyous celebration, a heartfelt expression of gratitude for a miracle, a recognition of the divine power that has intervened in Solomon's life. Solomon can feel the difference in his mind, the supernatural enhancement of his understanding capacity, the newfound clarity of his thinking. But divine wisdom, like any skill, requires testing. It needs to be honed and refined through practice. Soon after his return to Jerusalem, two prostitutes arrive at the royal palace, carrying a bitter dispute about the maternity of a living child. Their voices raised in anger and desperation. Their loud and desperate voices echoing through the great hall, reverberating off the marble walls, disturbing the peace of the royal court. Solomon sits on his golden throne, listening intently to their arguments, his face impassive, his eyes carefully observing every detail. Picture this scene. Two women from society's margins, from the lowest rungs of the social ladder, demanding justice from the most powerful man in the nation, appealing to the highest authority in the land. No lawyers, no witnesses, no DNA tests, no concrete evidence, except their competing testimonies, their conflicting accounts of what happened that fateful night. The first woman explains her version of the events, how they both gave birth in the same house, sharing a single room. But during the night, while she was sleeping, the other woman's son died from suffocation, accidentally rolled over on and smothered in the night. And then, in a callous act of deception, she secretly switched the babies, leaving the lifeless body in the true mother's arms, claiming the living child as her own. Her story sounds rehearsed, her gestures calculated, her eyes avoiding direct contact. She speaks with the confidence of someone who believes her deception is flawless, who is convinced that she can get away with her wicked scheme. The second woman vehemently denies this account, her voice rising in protest, her body trembling with emotion. She swears that the living baby is her legitimate son, born of her own flesh and blood. Tears streaming down her face as she clutches the child against her chest, protecting him from harm, swearing by the boy's life that she is his true mother, that she would never abandon him, that she would die to protect him. Her anguish seems genuine, her desperation real, her love for the child palpable. But words alone prove nothing in a courtroom, especially in a case like this, where both women claim the same child, where there is no other evidence to support either claim. Solomon observes both women carefully, noting their body language, their voice tone, their facial expressions, utilizing the divine wisdom he just received to penetrate beyond the surface, beyond the words and the tears, and see into the human heart, to discern the truth from the lies. This is his first test as the wise king, his opportunity to demonstrate the supernatural gift that God has bestowed upon him. No precedent exists for this kind of case. No legal framework covers identity disputes between prostitutes. No established procedure for determining the true mother of a child in such a situation. Yet somehow, looking at these two women, listening to their conflicting stories, Solomon sees clearly what others cannot. He understands the truth that lies hidden beneath the surface of their words. The king orders them to bring a sharp sword, a weapon of death, a symbol of his royal power. The bright metal reflects the window light as a soldier approaches the throne, his face impassive, his movements precise. Everyone in the hall holds their breath, anticipating the dramatic decision that's coming, sensing the weight of the moment. The blade gleams menacingly in the soldier's hand, reflecting the fear and uncertainty that grips the crowd. Whispers ripple through the assembled crowd, a murmur of apprehension and disbelief. What kind of judgment requires a weapon? What is the king planning to do? Divide the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other, Solomon declares with a firm and unwavering voice, testing the reactions of both women with an apparently cruel and heartless proposal. A calculated gamble that will reveal their true maternal feelings, exposing the truth that lies hidden within their hearts. The courtroom falls silent, the air thick with tension. Even the guards seem shocked by this brutal solution, their faces reflecting their disbelief. How can the wise king, the man known for his justice and compassion, propose to kill an innocent baby to solve this dispute with such a barbaric act? Think about what happens next, the significance of this pivotal moment. Two women, one child, one agonizing choice. One moment that will separate truth from lies forever, revealing the true mother and exposing the imposter. The true mother screams immediately, her voice filled with terror and despair. No, don't kill him. Give her the living child. Let her have him. She would rather lose her son. She would rather endure the pain of separation than see him dead, than witness his innocent life extinguished. Her authentic maternal love explodes in protective desperation, echoing off the stone walls of the courtroom. A primal instinct that values the child's life above her own claim to him, above her own desires. Her cry comes from the deepest part of a mother's heart, the instinctive bond that connects her to her child, the unwavering love that drives her to protect him at all costs. The liar, on the other hand, coldly agrees with the division, her heart devoid of compassion. Let him be neither mine nor yours. Divide him. Her response reveals her cruel nature, her lack of empathy, and confirms that she possesses no genuine maternal bonds with the child in question. She would rather see the baby destroyed, mutilated, than given to her rival, than allow the true mother to raise him and enjoy his love. Her words chill everyone present, a testament to her heartless selfishness. Solomon smiles, a knowing expression on his face, and orders them to give the baby to the first woman. For she is certainly the true mother, her love and compassion proving her claim. The woman's relief and gratitude flood the hall as she embraces her recovered son, showering him with kisses, vowing to protect him from harm. The wisdom worked perfectly, the divine insight revealing the truth in a way that no ordinary investigation could have achieved. No lengthy trial required, no complicated legal arguments, no need for witnesses or evidence. The truth revealed itself through the simple test of love versus selfishness, exposing the impostor and vindicating the true mother. The news of this wise judgment spreads rapidly throughout Israel, like fire in dry grass, reaching the most distant villages, where shepherds and farmers comment in amazement about their new king's supernatural wisdom, marveling at his ability to discern the truth in such a difficult case. Travelers carry the story along trade routes, merchants repeat it in marketplaces, and storytellers embellish it with dramatic details. The account grows more detailed with each telling, becoming a legend in its own time, but the core remains constant. Solomon possesses wisdom beyond human understanding, a divine gift that allows him to see into the hearts of men and administer justice with unparalleled fairness. The entire population develops a profound respect and a healthy fear of Solomon, recognizing that God's wisdom dwells in him to execute justice and uphold the law. His reputation as a wise judge, a just and compassionate ruler, establishes itself firmly throughout the nation, inspiring confidence and loyalty. This isn't mere political popularity. This is recognition that divine authority operates through their king, that Solomon is more than just a ruler, he is a conduit for God's will. Solomon has proven himself worthy of the supernatural gift he received, demonstrating his commitment to using his wisdom for the benefit of his people. But wisdom without organization accomplishes nothing. Solomon understands that divine guidance must be coupled with practical action, that good intentions alone are not enough to build a strong and prosperous kingdom. He organizes his government with impressive administrative efficiency, creating a well-oiled machine that is capable of managing the complex affairs of the nation. He appoints competent ministers for different areas, assigning responsibility for the treasury, the military, public works, and religious affairs. Each one chosen for merit and loyalty rather than family connections or political favors, ensuring that the most qualified individuals are serving in positions of power. He restructures the entire kingdom for maximum effectiveness, creating a system of governance that is both efficient and equitable. He divides Israel into 12 administrative districts that don't follow traditional tribal boundaries, a bold move that challenges the old rivalries and strengthens national unity. This innovative system promotes cooperation and reduces the potential for conflict between the tribes, creating a more cohesive and unified nation. This bold reorganization breaks down old divisions that had weakened the kingdom for generations, paving the way for greater stability and prosperity. Each district becomes responsible for supporting the royal court during 1 month of the year, organizing an efficient tax system that allows major public works projects to be undertaken without exhausting any specific region's resources. This equitable system ensures that the burden of supporting the kingdom is shared fairly among all the tribes, preventing resentment and promoting a sense of shared responsibility. The foundation for greatness is being laid systematically, methodically, wisely, brick by brick, decision by decision. But organization without resources means nothing. Solomon's royal table consumes daily 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of ordinary flour, 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep, demonstrating the growing prosperity and magnificence of the kingdom, showcasing the abundance that flows from wise governance. Think about those numbers, visualize the sheer scale of the consumption, the vast quantities of food required to feed the royal court each day. This isn't just royal luxury, this isn't just extravagant spending. This is economic power made visible through abundance, a demonstration of the wealth and productivity of the kingdom. The sheer scale of daily consumption reflects a nation experiencing unprecedented wealth and stability, a testament to Solomon's wise leadership and God's blessing. But Solomon's mind is focused on something far greater than palace feasts, something more lasting than earthly riches. He begins preparations to build the temple, the sacred structure that will house the Ark of the Covenant and serve as a permanent dwelling place for God among his people. He sends messengers to Hiram, king of Tyre, renewing the alliance of friendship that his father David had established with that prosperous maritime nation, seeking their assistance in this ambitious undertaking. The diplomatic correspondence carries weight beyond mere politics. This represents the launching of history's most ambitious construction project, a testament to faith that will endure for generations. The royal letter explains the grandiose project, a temple for the name of the Lord, built with the most precious materials on earth, requesting cedar and cypress wood from the famous Lebanese forests, as well as specialized craftsmen, skilled artisans capable of working with these valuable materials. Solomon doesn't ask for ordinary lumber or common workers. He demands the best. This house will be built with materials and skills worthy of the God who created heaven and earth. No expense will be spared in honoring the Almighty. Every detail matters when you're constructing a dwelling place for the Almighty. Every decision must be made with careful consideration and unwavering devotion. Hiram responds with enthusiasm, offering all necessary timber and promising to send his best craftsmen, sealing a commercial agreement that will strengthen both nations' economies for decades, creating a mutually beneficial partnership. The Phoenicians understand quality construction. They are renowned for their shipbuilding skills and their architectural expertise. Their ships sail every sea. Their buildings stand for centuries. Their artisans are legendary, their skill unmatched. When Hiram commits his finest workers to Solomon's project, he's investing in something he recognizes as historically significant, a project that will define Solomon's reign and leave a lasting legacy. Now comes the massive mobilization, the Herculean task of organizing the workforce and gathering the necessary resources. Solomon recruits 70,000 men to carry stones, 80,000 quarrymen in the mountains, and 3,300 supervisors, organizing the largest workforce ever assembled for a construction project in Israel's history, a logistical undertaking of epic proportions. Picture the scale of operation, visualize the sheer number of people involved. Over 150,000 workers dedicated to a single building project, their lives consumed by this sacred endeavor. Mountains of food to feed them, countless tools and equipment to maintain, logistical challenges that would challenge even modern project managers. The quarries near Jerusalem echo day and night with the sound of hammers and chisels, the relentless rhythm of construction reverberating through the hills. Sweating workers extract gigantic stones from the earth, carefully cutting and polishing them before being transported to the construction site. The work never stops. Teams rotate continuously, the sound of stone cutting becoming the soundtrack of the kingdom as craftsmen shape massive blocks with precision that seems impossible for ancient tools. 1 Kings 6 verse 7 tells us something extraordinary, a detail that highlights the sacred nature of this construction project. And when the house was being built, it was built with stone finished at the quarry, so that no hammer or chisel or any tool of iron was heard in the temple when it was being built. No hammer or chisel or any tool of iron was heard in the temple. Read that again. Let the significance of this detail sink in. Every stone was cut to exact specifications before arriving at the sacred site, ensuring a perfect fit and eliminating the need for noisy and disruptive construction work within the temple itself. The temple itself rose in complete silence, a supernatural quietness that allowed only worship and reverence, a peaceful atmosphere conducive to prayer and meditation. For 7 long years, Construction proceeds with impressive mathematical precision, each stone fitting perfectly with the next without need for adjustments. As if the entire building were a gigantic divine puzzle, its pieces preordained and perfectly aligned. This wasn't ancient trial and error construction. This was engineering that defied the limitations of Bronze Age technology, demonstrating a level of skill and precision that was truly remarkable. Every measurement calculated perfectly, every joint seamless, every surface smooth as polished marble. The temple grows majestically on Mount Moriah, its white stone walls reflecting sunlight like pure crystal, while the aroma of fresh cedar perfumes the air around the sacred work, creating a sensory experience of unparalleled beauty and holiness. Visitors approaching Jerusalem can see the structure from miles away, its brilliance visible across the landscape like a beacon announcing God's presence among his people, a symbol of hope and salvation for all who sought him. The visual impact overwhelms everyone who witnesses it, inspiring awe and reverence in the hearts of all who beheld its magnificence. Phoenician craftsmen carve life-sized golden cherubim, their extended wings touching above the Ark of the Covenant, creating a protective canopy over the most sacred object in Israel. Each feather detailed with such precision they seem ready to move with their own life, their golden surfaces gleaming in the dim light of the inner sanctuary. These aren't decorative angels. These are guardians of the most sacred space on earth, positioned to protect the very presence of God dwelling among mortals. Their silent vigilance, a testament to the holiness of the place. The craftsmanship surpasses anything previously created in human history, a testament to the skill and artistry of the Phoenician craftsmen. The most holy place is completely overlaid with pure gold, a breathtaking display of wealth and devotion, each wall shining like liquid fire when light enters through carefully planned openings, creating an atmosphere of holiness that intimidates even the builders themselves, inspiring a sense of awe and reverence. Workers speak in whispers when entering this space, their voices hushed by the overwhelming presence of the divine. The gold doesn't just cover the walls, it transforms them into surfaces that seem to glow with divine light, reflecting the glory of God. No human art has ever approached this level of sacred beauty. This is a masterpiece of craftsmanship that transcends earthly limitations. Hiram of Tyre, the bronze specialist craftsman, arrives to cast the two gigantic columns that will flank the temple entrance, monumental pillars that will stand as a testament to God's power and Solomon's wisdom. Their names are Jachin and Boaz, symbolizing stability and divine strength, their meanings deeply rooted in Hebrew tradition. These pillars stand as monuments to God's faithfulness, permanent reminders that his house is established forever and his power supports all who trust in him, a symbol of hope and stability for generations to come. The Molten Sea, a gigantic circular basin supported by 12 bronze oxen, is positioned in the courtyard for priestly purifications, a massive vessel designed for ritual cleansing. Its capacity equivalent to more than 2,000 baths of crystal-clear water, providing an abundant supply for the priests to perform their ablutions. This isn't just functional architecture, this is symbolic theology made visible, a tangible representation of the spiritual cleansing required to approach a holy God. The priests must be ceremonially clean before approaching the holy God, and this massive basin ensures abundant water for every purification ritual, upholding the purity and holiness of the temple. 10 smaller basins on bronze wheels are strategically distributed throughout the courtyard, allowing priests to perform ritual ablutions without interrupting the continuous flow of sacrifices and ceremonies, ensuring a smooth and efficient operation of the temple rituals. Every detail serves both a practical and a symbolic purpose, reflecting the careful planning and divine inspiration that guided the construction of the temple. The temple wasn't just built for practical purposes. It was also intended for profound spiritual connection. Think of the entire complex as an intricately designed machine, each component meticulously placed to maximize the efficiency of worship directed towards the God of Israel. Every detail served a purpose, contributing to the overall sanctity and operational flow. The bronze altar, a centerpiece of this divine apparatus, was constructed with awe-inspiring dimensions: 20 cubits in length, 20 in width, and 10 in height. Imagine the sheer scale. It was capable of consuming the burnt offerings from the entire nation gathered at once. This wasn't some small, symbolic gesture. It was a massive undertaking meant to accommodate sacrifices from hundreds of thousands of worshippers simultaneously. Solomon envisioned Israel as a nation utterly dedicated to the worship of the one true God, and the altar size reflected that ambitious vision. After 7 years of intensive labor, the temple stood complete, a testament to human craftsmanship and divine inspiration. Solomon, recognizing the momentous occasion, summoned all the elders of Israel, the tribal chiefs, and the family princes for the solemn dedication of this sacred building. This wasn't merely a building opening. It was the most significant religious event in Israel's history, a moment that would resonate through generations. Representatives journeyed from every corner of the kingdom to Jerusalem, their hearts filled with anticipation. The entire nation held its breath, united in a shared sense of reverence. The Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred object in Israel, was transported solemnly from David's tent to its final resting place in the temple's most holy chamber. Levitical shoulders bore the weight of this precious cargo, while silver trumpets echoed through the hills surrounding Jerusalem, their resonant tones proclaiming the ark's arrival. The procession moved with reverent slowness, each step carefully calculated to honor the sacred object that represented God's very presence among his people. Thousands lined the route, their eyes wide with wonder as they witnessed history unfold. When the priests exited the holy place after positioning the ark, a glorious cloud filled the entire temple. It was so dense, so all-encompassing, that the ministers could not remain standing to perform their service. 1 Kings 8 verse 11 vividly records what transpired. So that the priests could not continue ministering because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. The glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Ponder the implications of this divine manifestation. This was the same God who spoke creation into existence, who parted the Red Sea, who gave the law at Mount Sinai. Now, his presence dwelt permanently within this building that Solomon had constructed. The cloud wasn't mere ceremonial theater. It was the visible manifestation of the invisible God taking up residence among his chosen people. Solomon, filled with awe and reverence, turned to the assembled crowd and blessed the entire congregation of Israel in a loud voice. His royal figure was silhouetted against the supernatural brilliance emanating from the newly consecrated temple. The king stood poised between heaven and earth, between God's glory and human need, fulfilling the role of mediator that every righteous ruler must embrace. His voice carried across the vast courtyard where thousands had gathered to witness this historic moment. By music, he raises his hands toward the heavens and pronounces a dedication prayer that encompasses every future circumstance his people might face. Sin, repentance, war, famine, captivity, always pointing toward divine mercy. This isn't just a ceremonial blessing. Solomon understands that nations rise and fall, that his people will face trials that could destroy them, that only God's faithfulness can sustain them through whatever darkness lies ahead. Solomon's prayer echoes powerfully. Hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel, when they pray toward this place, and listen from your dwelling place, from heaven. And when you hear, forgive. When they pray toward this place, Solomon understands that this temple will become the spiritual center not just for his generation, but for countless generations of Israelites who will look toward Jerusalem when seeking God's face. When Solomon finishes praying, fire descends from heaven and consumes the burnt offering and the sacrifices, dramatically confirming that God has accepted the house dedicated to his eternal name. The flames come from above, not from any earthly source. This divine fire validates everything: the years of construction, the enormous expense, the careful attention to every detail. God himself puts his seal of approval on Solomon's work. The entire crowd prostrates themselves, faces to the ground on the stone pavement, worshiping and praising the Lord, because he is good, and his mercy endures forever. Their voices united in celestial harmony. Picture this scene. Thousands of people flat on their faces before the consuming fire of God's acceptance. The sound of unified worship rising like incense from the greatest assembly in Israel's history. The dedication festival lasts 14 consecutive days, with continuous sacrifices, Levitical music, public feasts, and celebrations that transform Jerusalem into the center of joy and worship for the entire known world. This isn't just a religious ceremony. This is a national party that announces Israel's unique relationship with the Creator of the universe. The celebration becomes legendary, remembered for generations to come. 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep are sacrificed during the celebration. The aroma of burning meat rises like sweet incense, while the people celebrate God's manifest presence among them. And music. Think about those numbers. The sacrificial system operates at maximum capacity for 2 solid weeks. The smoke from countless altars creates a permanent cloud over Jerusalem, visible from distant mountains. People travel from distant nations just to behold the temple's magnificence and witness Solomon's wisdom, bringing precious gifts and spreading Israel's fame to the ends of the earth. Merchants carry stories back to Egypt, Mesopotamia, and regions beyond mapped territories. Diplomats return home with reports that make their own kings envious. Jerusalem becomes the most talked about city in the ancient world. God appears again to Solomon in a dream after the temple dedication, confirming that he heard his prayer and sanctified that house so his name would remain there forever. This second divine visitation carries a different weight than the first. God acknowledges what Solomon has accomplished, but he also issues a warning that will prove prophetic. The divine promise is clear and simultaneously threatening. If Solomon walks in the Lord's ways like his father David, the throne will be established forever. But if he turns aside, terrible consequences will follow. 1 Kings 9 verses 6 to 7 records God's words. But if you or your children turn aside from following me, then I will cut off Israel from the land that I have given them, and the house that I have consecrated for my name I will cast out of my sight. I will cut off Israel from the land. I will cast out of my sight the house I have consecrated. Read those words carefully. Even this magnificent temple, even God's own dwelling place among his people, could be rejected if the covenant conditions are violated. Solomon also builds his royal house, a magnificent palace that takes 13 years to complete, with vast halls supported by cedar columns and rooms lined with aromatic woods. The throne hall, where Solomon judges and governs, is entirely covered with gold from floor to ceiling, with an ivory throne inlaid with pure gold that becomes the symbol of royal power. 6 steps lead to the throne, with golden lions on each side of each step, totaling 12 lions representing strength, majesty, and divine protection over Solomon's kingdom. Each lion is crafted with such detail that visitors feel intimidated approaching the royal seat. The fame of Solomon's wisdom spreads to the ends of the inhabited earth, reaching the ears of the Queen of Sheba, who governs a prosperous kingdom in the far south of the Arabian Peninsula. The queen decides to personally test Solomon's wisdom, organizing a royal caravan with camels loaded with spices, gold in great quantity, and extremely rare precious stones. She arrives in Jerusalem with an impressive entourage, her colorful garments contrasting with the white stone architecture of the city, while the perfume of the spices she brought scents the streets. Solomon receives her in the great hall of his palace, answering all her difficult questions with wisdom that leaves her breathless, demonstrating knowledge spanning from botany to astronomy to philosophy. No question stumps him. No riddle goes unsolved. The supernatural gift operates flawlessly under the most demanding test it has yet faced. But the Queen of Sheba doesn't stop with intellectual challenges. She observes everything. The queen examines the organization of the royal household, the food on the table, the behavior of the servants, their clothing, the cupbearers, and the burnt offerings presented at the temple, becoming completely amazed. This isn't casual tourism. This is systematic evaluation by someone who understands how kingdoms operate. She watches the precision of palace protocols, notices the quality of every garment, studies the efficiency of service delivery. Everything she observes confirms that Solomon's wisdom extends far beyond clever answers to difficult questions. The report I heard in my own land about your achievements and your wisdom was true, she declares, admitting that reality has exceeded even the exaggerated accounts she had heard. Think about that admission. This woman rules a wealthy kingdom, commands trade routes across continents, and has seen the greatest palaces of her era. Yet Solomon's court leaves her stunned. 1 Kings 10 verse 7 records her testimony. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard. Not even half was told me. Read those words again. The Queen of Sheba had heard incredible stories about Solomon's kingdom, but the reality surpassed the most enthusiastic reports. The Queen of Sheba presents Solomon with 120 talents of gold, spices in great quantity, and precious stones, establishing commercial relationships that will enrich both nations. 120 talents represents an enormous fortune, enough gold to fund major construction projects or maintain armies for years. This isn't tribute from a conquered nation. This is investment from an impressed ally. Solomon responds with even more valuable gifts, demonstrating his kingdom's extraordinary abundance, and the queen returns to her country amazed, spreading the fame of the Israelite king. The diplomatic exchange becomes legendary throughout the ancient world. When the wealthiest queen in Africa declares Solomon's superiority, every other ruler takes notice. Solomon's wealth increases exponentially through international commerce. His naval fleets bring gold from Ophir, silver, ivory, peacocks, and apes from distant lands beyond the horizon. These aren't occasional trading expeditions. These are regular commercial operations that generate continuous streams of exotic wealth. The ships return laden with treasures that most people have never seen. Merchants from every nation seek an audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God placed in his heart, bringing annual gifts of silver, gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. The palace becomes an international marketplace where wisdom is exchanged for wealth, where political alliances are forged through commercial relationships, where Solomon's reputation draws tribute from the ends of the earth. The king crafts 200 large shields of hammered gold and 300 smaller shields, each worth a fortune. And music, decorating the house of the forest of Lebanon as symbols of wealth and military power. These aren't functional weapons. These are displays of prosperity so extreme that shields become artwork, gold becomes decoration, and military equipment serves as status symbols. All of Solomon's drinking vessels are pure gold. And in the house of the forest of Lebanon, nothing is made of silver because, during Solomon's reign, silver was considered worthless. Picture what this means. Silver, a precious metal coveted by other kingdoms, becomes so common in Jerusalem that it's not even worth using for palace utensils. Only gold meets the standards of Solomon's court. The king makes silver as common in Jerusalem as stones and cedars as plentiful as the sycamores that grow naturally in the land, demonstrating prosperity unprecedented in world history. The economic transformation is staggering. Materials that represent luxury elsewhere become ordinary in Israel. The kingdom operates on a scale of abundance that defies comparison with any previous civilization. Solomon possesses 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen stationed in strategic cities and in Jerusalem, creating a military force that intimidates regional powers and ensures lasting peace. This isn't just defensive capability. This is overwhelming supremacy that makes war unthinkable for neighboring nations. The sight of Solomon's cavalry patrols becomes a reminder that challenging Israel means facing impossible odds. At the height of his glory, all divine promises seem fulfilled. Incomparable wisdom, immense riches, international honor, complete peace, and a kingdom extending from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines and the border of Egypt. Every blessing God promised has materialized beyond expectation. Solomon has achieved what no king before or since has accomplished. But, during his years of prosperity, Solomon gradually relaxes his spiritual vigilance, allowing material success to slowly obscure the sincere dependence on God that characterized his youth. The change doesn't happen overnight. Success breeds confidence. Confidence diminishes dependence. And dependence was the foundation of everything Solomon had achieved. What his subjects don't realize is that everything began changing when Solomon formed his first political alliance through marriage to Pharaoh's daughter, introducing a dangerous precedent into his life. The decision seems purely practical, a brilliant diplomatic maneuver that secures Egypt's friendship and opens lucrative trade opportunities. but it violates explicit divine commands about foreign marriages. The Egyptian princess arrives in Jerusalem with an impressive royal entourage, bringing customs, deities, and practices that seem harmless initially, but plant seeds of future religious syncretism. She doesn't arrive alone or empty-handed. She brings her entire cultural world with her. Servants who worship Egyptian gods, priests who perform Egyptian rituals, and expectations that her religious traditions will be respected. Solomon builds a special house for her in the city of David, allowing her to maintain her Egyptian religious rites in private, which represents the first concession to polytheism. The compromise seems reasonable. She can worship her gods quietly while Solomon continues serving the Lord publicly, but compromise with idolatry never stays contained. This first matrimonial alliance demonstrates remarkable diplomatic effectiveness, bringing peace with Egypt and access to profitable trade routes, apparently justifying the wisdom of the political decision. The immediate benefits are undeniable. Economic prosperity increases, military threats diminish, international prestige grows. Encouraged by this success, Solomon expands his matrimonial diplomacy, marrying Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite princesses to seal alliances with strategic neighboring kingdoms. Each marriage brings immediate political advantages, but the cumulative spiritual cost remains hidden. Each new wife brings her own servants, eunuchs, priests, and idols from her homeland, gradually transforming the royal palace into a religious Babel where dozens of deities are secretly venerated. The wisest man who ever lived is walking into the most foolish trap in human history. What appears to be wise political tolerance actually violates the law of Moses directly, which expressly forbade mixed marriages precisely because they would lead to catastrophic national idolatry. Moses hadn't written these commands arbitrarily. God knew exactly what would happen when his people intermarried with pagans. 1 Kings 11 verse 2 records the divine warning from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the children of Israel, "You shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods." Read those words again. God wasn't being harsh or narrow-minded. He was protecting his people from spiritual destruction that he could see coming from eternity. Solomon accumulates 700 wives who are princesses and 300 concubines, creating a royal harem that functions like a miniature United Nations where each culture maintains its distinct religious practices. Think about those numbers. 1,000 women from dozens of different nations, each bringing her own gods, her own priests, her own sacred rituals. The palace becomes a theological battleground disguised as diplomatic harmony. The palace transforms into a cosmopolitan center where incense to Molech mingles with sacrifices to Ashtoreth, while offerings to Chemosh compete with libations to Sidonian gods on private altars. The air itself becomes polluted with competing prayers to false deities. What was once the holiest city on earth now hosts a religious marketplace where every nation's gods compete for attention. Initially, Solomon maintains his personal devotion to Jehovah, offering regular sacrifices at the temple, but his spiritual resistance gradually weakens under constant pressure from his foreign wives. Picture what this looks like day after day, year after year. 1,000 women he loves, each asking for just small accommodations for their ancestral faiths. Each request seems reasonable in isolation. How can you expect a man to resist the tearful pleas of women he loves, asking for just one small concession, that he permit the construction of a tiny altar for their ancestral gods? The pressure isn't violent or threatening. It's emotional, persistent, and seemingly justified. These women aren't demanding that Solomon abandon his faith, just that he respect theirs. Solomon rationalizes his concessions. An altar here and another there won't compromise his fundamental faith. They're just diplomatic gestures necessary to maintain domestic harmony and international peace. Each compromise seems minor. Each altar appears insignificant compared to the magnificent temple he built for God. But spiritual compromise follows a predictable pattern of escalation. He constructs an altar for Chemosh, the abominable deity of the Moabites, in the hills east of Jerusalem, where smoke from foreign incense rises toward the heavens that belong only to Jehovah. This isn't happening in some distant land. This is happening within sight of God's temple. The geography of apostasy begins just outside the holy city. Other altars follow quickly for Molech of the Ammonites, Ashtoreth of the Sidonians, and a proliferation of shrines that transform the surroundings of Jerusalem into an idolatrous landscape. What took generations to accomplish in other nations happens in Solomon's kingdom within decades. The holy city becomes surrounded by competing religious sites. The sound of ritual drums, pagan chants, and even the screams of sacrificed children begin echoing from the high places around the holy city, defiling the spiritual atmosphere that had previously characterized the capital. Picture what this means. The city where God's glory filled the temple now hosts child sacrifice. The hills that once echoed with psalms now reverberate with demonic worship. Solomon personally participates in some rituals to demonstrate respect for his wife's traditions, telling himself it's merely diplomacy, but his feet walk on profane ground. He doesn't abandon temple worship entirely. He adds pagan worship to it. The king who once knew God's presence now bows before silent idols, convincing himself that political necessity justifies spiritual compromise. 1 Kings 11 verse 4 tells us what happened. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. His wives turned his heart after other gods. His heart was not loyal to the Lord his God. The transformation was complete. What thoughts passed through Solomon's mind as he offered incense before silent idols after knowing the real presence of the living God who had filled the temple with his glory? How does someone who experienced divine visitations convince himself that carved stone deserves worship? The psychology of apostasy defies rational explanation. The world's wisest man gradually becomes history's most tragic example of how wealth, power, and worldly influences can corrupt an initially sincere heart. All the knowledge remains intact. All the intellectual understanding persists, but knowledge without obedience becomes useless religious information rather than living faith. His intellectual knowledge about God remains intact, but his emotional and practical devotion grows cold like coals that have stopped being blown by the breath of genuine worship. The temple continues functioning normally with its daily sacrifices, but Solomon attends the ceremonies less and less frequently, preferring the more sensual and exciting rites of pagan cults. The services of foreign gods offer what temple worship doesn't: immediate sensual gratification, dramatic emotional experiences, and religious practices that accommodate human desires rather than demanding sacrifice. The contrast becomes irresistible to a heart that has grown comfortable with compromise. The Lord's anger burns against Solomon because his heart has turned away from the one who had appeared to him twice and given specific commands about not following other gods. Think about this. God had personally visited Solomon, had granted him supernatural wisdom, had blessed him beyond any king in history, and now Solomon worships idols. God appears to Solomon a third time, not in gentle dreams, but in direct confrontation. Because of his apostasy, the kingdom will be torn from his descendants, except for one tribe. This isn't negotiation. This is judgment. The kingdom that David built, that Solomon expanded, that God blessed beyond measure, will be ripped apart as consequences for spiritual betrayal. Music. The divine prophecy echoes terribly. Because this has been your mind and you. Because this has been your mind, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes that I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you. The gravity of these words, recorded in 1 Kings 11 verse 11, hangs heavy in the air, a divine verdict echoing Solomon's spiritual failings. The Lord, who once showered Solomon with unmatched wisdom, immeasurable wealth, and unparalleled honor, now pronounces a sentence of profound consequence. The kingdom, seemingly unshakable in its prosperity, blessed beyond measure, and envisioned as an enduring legacy, is now destined for destruction, all because of one man's tragic spiritual compromise. Yet, even in judgment, a flicker of divine mercy remains. For David's sake, a man after God's own heart, the full impact of the division will be delayed, unfolding not during Solomon's reign but in the tumultuous years of his son. Furthermore, one tribe will be preserved, a testament to God's enduring covenant with David and the sanctity of Jerusalem, the city he had chosen. The consequences are unavoidable, a debt that must be paid, but their full force is tempered out of respect for David's unwavering faithfulness and the eternal promise God made to his lineage, a promise that echoed through generations. As Solomon's spiritual authority wanes, long-dormant enemies begin to stir, rising as instruments of divine retribution. Hadad the Edomite, who had sought refuge in Egypt decades earlier when David's armies conquered Edom, now sees an opportunity to reclaim lost power. He returns from his Egyptian exile, ready to exploit Solomon's weakened spiritual condition and sow discord in the kingdom. The victories of the past offer no guarantee of future security. The tide has turned. Reson, son of Eliada, a man with ambition and charisma, gathers followers in Damascus, forging them into a formidable force. He establishes an independent Syrian kingdom, a direct challenge to Solomon's regional hegemony, a thorn in the side of the once dominant Israel. The buffer states, once submissive to Israel's might, now sense weakness and seize the opportunity to assert their independence, chipping away at the edges of the empire. The mighty edifice that Solomon had erected begins to crumble from within. More ominously, Jeroboam, a talented Ephraimite renowned for his administrative skills, who served as supervisor of public works for the influential house of Joseph, is approached by the prophet Ahijah on a secluded road. This is no mere political rebellion, born of discontent and ambition. This is a divinely orchestrated judgment, a calculated strike at the heart of Solomon's kingdom. God chooses his instruments with meticulous care, and Jeroboam possesses the administrative experience, the tribal connections, and the burning ambition necessary to ignite a successful revolt. Ahijah, with solemn purpose, tears his new cloak into 12 pieces, each representing a tribe of Israel. 10 of these pieces he gives to Jeroboam, prophesying that he will rule over 10 tribes because Solomon has forsaken the Lord, turning to the detestable worship of Ashtoreth, Chemosh, and Molech, pagan deities whose altars defiled the very land God had promised to his people. The symbolic action is undeniable in its meaning. The unified kingdom will be torn asunder, just as the prophet's garment has been ripped apart, with the majority of it going to someone outside the Davidic line, a sign of the Lord's displeasure. However, Jeroboam's conspiracy is uncovered, and he is forced to flee to Egypt, seeking refuge under the protection of Pharaoh Shishak, who now sees a golden opportunity to weaken his rival, Israel, by supporting internal rebels. The same Egypt that once trembled before Solomon's power now harbors his enemies, waiting to pounce. The shifting sands of international relationships mirror the collapse of spiritual authority. Former allies become opportunistic opponents, sensing vulnerability and seizing any advantage. Solomon's final years are a stark contrast to the golden age that preceded them. Growing tensions grip the kingdom, fueled by economic woes caused by excessive spending and lavish projects. Popular discontent simmers beneath the surface, exacerbated by heavy taxation that burdens the people. Internal political fragmentation weakens the kingdom's foundations. The prosperity that once seemed limitless begins to show cracks, the foundation of gold revealing veins of instability. The tax system, designed to fund magnificent temples and palaces, now crushes the very people who must bear its weight. The glory days are fading, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The forced labor system, imposed by Solomon for his grandiose constructions, generates deep resentment, especially among the northern tribes, who bear the greatest burden. Imagine the toll on ordinary families. Men conscripted for months at a time, leaving wives to manage farms alone, children growing up without their fathers present, communities disrupted by the constant demands of the royal projects. Solomon, increasingly paranoid and tyrannical, suspects conspiracies everywhere, his mind clouded by fear and suspicion. He loses the practical wisdom that had characterized his early years as the great peacemaker and unifier. The supernatural gift of discernment, once so sharp and clear, becomes clouded by spiritual compromise. The king who once judged perfectly between truth and lies now struggles to distinguish between loyalty and betrayal among his own people. His luxurious lifestyle descends into moral decadence, marked by excessive banquets, sensual addictions, and wasteful spending that drains the national treasury and corrupts the royal example before the people. The king, who was supposed to model righteousness for the nation, instead demonstrates how power, unchecked by accountability, leads inevitably to corruption. Understanding God's will holds no value if we fail to put it into practice. Spiritual knowledge, divorced from spiritual action, transforms from a potential blessing into a harsh condemnation. The tragic undoing of Solomon stemmed from the ever-widening chasm between his lofty ideals and his flawed execution. His life serves as a stark illustration that true spiritual leadership transcends mere intellectual prowess or administrative skill. It demands unwavering moral integrity, a steadfast resistance to compromise, especially when the pressures mount. Public ministry necessitates private holiness. Spiritual authority flows organically from spiritual authenticity. The moment a leader begins to compartmentalize faith and daily conduct, their influence begins to wane, even if outward success persists for a time. Solomon's magnificent public persona masked a deep, agonizing private spiritual emptiness. The striking contrast between his early devotion and his ultimate demise reveals a sobering truth. Negative spiritual transformation can be just as dramatic, just as profound, as positive conversion, particularly when it occurs insidiously, gradually, over time. Apostasy can be as all-consuming, as complete, as salvation itself. The human heart possesses the capacity to stray just as far from God as it can draw near to Him. The potential for spiritual greatness is intrinsically linked to the potential for spiritual destruction. Solomon's tragic trajectory demonstrates unequivocally that no one is too blessed to fall. No one is too gifted to fail. The final, heart-wrenching tragedy lies in the fact that Solomon possessed ample knowledge to steer clear of the pitfalls that ultimately consumed him. Yet, time and again, he consciously chose temporary convenience over lasting obedience to the divine principles he knew so intimately. His downfall was not a result of ignorance. It was the consequence of willful rebellion, cleverly disguised as practical wisdom. He knew better, but he repeatedly chose the worst path, until this pattern became entrenched, seemingly irreversible. Each compromise he made paved the way for the next, making it easier, until his spiritual defenses crumbled completely. His fall underscores the unsettling reality that even extraordinary supernatural encounters, divine visions, miraculous wisdom, and abundant material blessings offer no immunity against apostasy if they are not accompanied by consistent, unwavering spiritual vigilance. Past encounters with God provide no shield against present compromise. Yesterday's spiritual victories do not guarantee tomorrow's spiritual faithfulness. Spiritual experience ossifies into mere spiritual memory when a dynamic, ongoing relationship with God is neglected. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 12 delivers a chilling warning. Therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Let those who feel secure in their faith be especially wary. The moment we become complacent, feeling spiritually secure based on past experiences or present gifts, we open ourselves up to the very same deception that led to Solomon's destruction. Spiritual pride invariably precedes spiritual destruction. Solomon's legacy serves as an enduring cautionary tale, a perpetual reminder that great divine capacities can be tragically squandered when the heart gradually turns away from the giver. Every spiritual gift demands ongoing stewardship. Every divine blessing requires continuing faithfulness. Nothing that God bestows upon us is ours to possess independently of our relationship with Him. The gifts ultimately belong to God. We are merely temporary stewards, entrusted with divine resources. His life's narrative underscores that true wisdom consists not only in understanding God's will, but in submitting to it continuously, even when this submission demands significant personal sacrifice. Understanding without submission is simply rebellion with education. Knowing God's requirements while simultaneously rejecting God's authority makes one more accountable, not less. Knowledge amplifies responsibility rather than diminishing it. What aspects of Solomon's life resonate within our own spiritual journey? How can we glean wisdom from his successes and failures to cultivate lasting faithfulness in our own lives? His story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our own compromises, our own rationalizations, our own areas where convenience seems to trump conviction. Where are we making small concessions that could potentially lead to large-scale apostasies? The story concludes with a stark reminder that our eternal destiny is not determined by past achievements or received gifts, but by the posture of our heart at the moment we leave this earth. Solomon's story teaches us that spiritual vigilance is a daily, conscious choice. No past blessing can protect us from future failure if we cease to depend on God. True wisdom lies in consistently doing what is right, even when it comes at a significant personal cost. What area of your life requires greater spiritual vigilance today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this message resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. Click on the next video on your screen. May God richly bless your life. Until next time.